Hello everybody, thank you very much for being able to be here. As Cecilia said, I will talk about some of the preliminary insights I gained from my PhD study on labor market experiences and aspirations of refugees who have university education. And I am extremely happy to be able to talk here today because, first of all, I haven't had the chance to present my research a lot since I've been only working on this topic for a bit less than 2 years. But also because I think this topic screams to come out of the academic environment, of the academic ivory tower, and to be talked about also in forums like this where there are also practitioners working in this field. So I'm very pleased to be able to talk to you about some of the insights that I gained. And how I see my contribution is basically, I see myself as a channel, as a medium to put forward, to bring forward, to talk about some of the stories and narratives that individuals who are highly educated and came to Europe as refugees told me. So, yeah. So just very shortly about what my research, what my study is about, so that you know where I'm getting my topic of today's talk from. I'm basically doing a PhD on what are labor market experiences and aspirations of highly educated refugees in 3 European cities, so the ones that live in Oslo, in Malmö, and in Munich, in Germany. And I did over 40 interviews with individuals, lengthy interviews that lasted about 2 hours, with individuals who have university education, who already finished their studies as doctors, as IT specialists, as engineers, teachers, but also who have degrees in humanities and other social sciences, and also economics, and who came to Europe and to these 3 cities as refugees and obtained already their asylum there. And I did these interviews about 2 years ago and until the summer of 2017. And most of the individuals from Syria, but also from Iraq, Afghanistan, and also just a couple from Yemen and Palestine. So a lot of the men and women I talked to were not in these countries for a very long time, most of them for 1 to 3 years. So what the stories that they talked to me about and what our interviews were mostly about were, of course, the challenges that they already face, but also a lot about the dreams and hopes and wishes that they have for the future. Yeah, so this is what I will also talk about. There could be a lot of things I could talk here today about. I could talk about what Adnan was already telling, that the individuals I talk to don't want to be a burden, but see themselves as a contribution to the societies to which they came to. Or what Inam was saying about their loss of professional identities. All these topics came up also in the interviews that I did, but I decided to just shortly talk about some of the challenges, some of the topics that were told to me actually in almost every single of the interviews I did, no matter if a person was a doctor or as an IT engineer, if a person was living in Germany or in Sweden or in Norway. Because of course there are still differences between people who have regulated professions, that means who are either teachers or doctors, or who come from occupations that are not state regulated, like IT specialists or who are engineers. And also, of course, there are quite some differences when it comes to labor market integration of individuals who live in Germany or in Sweden, because there are different regulations, that there are different integration programs. The validation processes are also slightly different in different countries. But I will brush over these differences and rather talk about some of the stories that were, some of the points that were present in all of these interviews. And one of the things that was very obvious and that might seem very common sense to you is that most of the individuals that I talked to really want to continue working in the occupation that they were educated in. And I think this is important to stress, because when we talk about refugee labor market integration, everybody talks about, well, it's about getting a job. But what kind of job, and what do these individuals that we talk about actually want? It's not just whichever kind of jobs, it's the particular job that they did, that they worked already in, or that they were educated in. This is what integration means for them. This is something that will make them feel a part of the society, to work in the field that they feel that they have capacities for, that they are educated for, that they can contribute with. So so this wish to work in the occupation that they were educated in has a lot to do with identity of who they feel they are, but also with the sense that these are the skills that they have, these are the tools that they bring with them. And they don't have tools to work in a lot of other professions. And also a sense of that it would be an immense waste of these resources that they have if they would simply not employ them anymore and work in a lower skilled jobs. So all this wish of wanting to work in the occupation that they were educated for, that they had already experience in, has to do with all of these different aspects. Some of the individuals I talked to are, of course, also wanted to study again, didn't want to immediately search for a job, wanted to engage in higher education studies. And there, the rationale behind this was a lot of times to get a European certificate that will then enable them to find a job in the particular field that they want to work in an easier way. But apart from these aspirations, the goals that they have on the destination country's labor market, what the men and women that I talked a lot about are some of the challenges that they face along the way of reaching that goal. And when I was looking through the stories and narratives that I received through these interviews, it struck me that there were basically more or less three major challenges, three major sets of topics that individuals almost across different professions and in all three different countries, and also regardless of how old they were, talked about. And these challenges were connected to time, to language, and to the certificates they had. And this is what I would also like to shortly talk about. So when it comes to time, what the individuals I talked a lot about is that they want to re-enter their occupations as soon as possible again. They don't want to waste time on the way there, because they haven't been working in their profession for a long time already, due to the war or conflicts or in the countries where they come from, because of the traveling to Europe. And so once they reached the destination country in Europe, they really wanted to just get started. Start learning the language, start validating their certificates, and go back in the labor market as soon as possible. They didn't want to sit around to wait and waste time, as they talk about. And this was, I think, particularly obvious when they talked about 2-3 topics. One of them was this time when they were waiting for the asylum decision. There, a lot of them couldn't, there were no language courses organized, they were just sitting around, and this, they thought it was wasted time. So they wanted to learn language, and a lot of them did it on their own on the internet. But a lot of them would have loved to have language courses organized so that they could start learning the language, so that then once they get a decision to be able to stay in the respective countries, they could fastly integrate and find a job or validate their qualifications. The same thing was when it comes to validation of qualifications, especially when we talk about occupations like doctors and teachers who have to go through this process of obtaining a license. This can take approximately 5 years. So this seemed like a huge amount of time. So yeah. The same things when waiting for available places at language courses, like for example in Sweden, where SFI and Svenska som andraspråk, it can take a long time to obtain a place in these language courses. They wanted that this would go faster. I will now go a bit faster because I talked already about this willingness to learn the language, because this was the way of entering the labor market and of obtaining the license to practice their professions. So this was something that they also talked a lot about. And the third thing that individuals talked a lot about was were the certificates, of validating their own foreign credentials, which was a lot of times an extremely lengthy process, as I already mentioned, but also sometimes rather challenging, because due to the fact that they come from war-torn countries, a lot of them weren't able to take the documents with them that they needed, or they were destroyed in the rubbles of their homes. So once they came here, many were not able to prove that they had the education that they had. So they were in search for possibilities of how to nevertheless show that they have the education that they have. And there exist already some initiatives in certain countries and in Europe, like the qualifications passport for refugees, or in Norway we have the UVD procedure that allows individuals to basically gain a certificate of their qualifications, even though they don't have the formal certificates with them, or some of them are missing. And also when it comes to making the entry to the labor market shorter, there are already some initiatives, like the Snabbspår here in Sweden, or the Korta Vägen programs. So I think there are already some programs at place working against these challenges that highly educated refugees face when entering their labor market. And I think probably with talking more about it and bringing forward further their perspectives on this, maybe we can also help create even more ones, or actually improve the existing programs. Thanks a lot.
I really want to have someone ask you questions too, because it's a tough time to have them 15 minutes full. I really would like to ask you one question, because I'm really curious. You had 3 cities, Oslo, Munich and Malmö. Did you see any, now you took the similarities that were really good, and that I think it's good that we now have research on actually falling back to this is actually how it is. But I'm really curious about, were there any differences between these three cities that you would like to point out?
I think the differences between the countries can be mostly seen when it comes to people who want to work in non-regulated jobs, so like that are engineers or IT specialists. And what I saw there is that, for example, for individuals who have education in these fields, I think it was much easier for them to work in these fields in Germany than in the two respective Scandinavian countries, because the market is more liberal. It is easier to get a job than, for example, in Scandinavia, where hurdles to get employed, where the threshold is higher because the benefits that come with employment are also higher.